It's dark in here, Keith.
Yeah, it is, John. Yeah, it is. I can't wait till the new studio is done and we go with some LED lights.
It's looking real good up there. We got to get a skylight.
No skylight.
Skylight's
floor.
leaked. That's going to be a little hard.
Yeah, no.
Maybe a bad idea. No, it's looking great up there. We were walking around there looking at it earlier, and man, they're doing a good job out there. Seriously.
I appreciate that.
That looks amazing.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll actually do a barn studio history episode, but for our listeners out there who have not heard us mention it before or whatever, social medias didn't see anything, we're redoing a 170-year-old-ish barn into our new Wheelin' studio, which will also have the studio in it. We'll have areas to talk about cars and do video work and all sorts of things. So I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen.
We're putting a kegerator in, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Excellent.
Maybe just a full bar with like kegs.
I mean,
that's kind of my plan there.
Whiskey and bourbon on tap, one of those guns that you see people use at the bar. But instead of Coke, it's whiskey.
Well, I figure from some of my salvage jobs, I'll just get a drinking fountain and just run whiskey through it.
Oh, I like that better.
Keep it nice cold and just,
I like that even better. Bad ideas.
Man. Well, why don't we talk about some trucks or something today instead?
We probably should.
Yeah, probably.
It's time to hit the trail, lock in those hubs, and throw it into low range. Because you are listening to Wheelin' with Keith and Johnny Orange. They're here to talk about 4x4s, trucks, and everything to do with enjoying the great outdoors. Buckle up. Here's your hosts, Keith and Johnny Orange.
So, John, we're at episode 78. We don't have a guest bringing on this episode, so it's just you and me again back in the studio talking to each other. Which
you realize how many listeners are going to lose because of that?
Yeah, possibly. But I did get thinking about it. What happened in 78, right?
1978. No, I mean, I assume my parents were probably almost met.
Almost met?
Yeah, I'm born in 88. They got married in 84. So I assume they may have met by then. Maybe not. I don't know.
You'll have to ask them sometime.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'll have to do that.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of some truck history, which we haven't done any 4x4 history episodes in a while.
It has been a while.
And I know that they're popular with certain crowds. Some people like them, some people don't. So, we can keep this kind of light, but I was thinking about it, and sure, there was models that came out in 78, and I'm sure people are going to say, oh, wait a minute, you should have talked about this or that, and please go to 4x4 Talk, which we are getting more action on that. I noticed on Facebook, on the group 4x4 Talk.
Excellent.
People are actually going on and putting comments, and they're commenting on things that they heard on the podcast. So that was the idea. That was the idea. And, the one guy, somebody put on there that, yes, he wants Grandpa Keith as my name, but I
forgot about that.
I'm still fighting that one,
I think, can we put a poll up? Mr. Andrew, are we able to put a poll up on that page?
Oh, my God. Well,
I thought we could.
I'm sure there's a way to do it.
We'll find it. I think we have to put a poll for Grandpa Keith, just going with Keith or something else.
Oh, man. Well, I don't know.
We can allow people to put suggestions.
Those suggestions. There you go.
I'm still thinking Grandpa Keith's going to win it out, though. Everybody, let us know what you want to hear. Do you want a poll, or do you just want to vote him as Grandpa Keith and keep it that way?
Well, speaking of grandparents and old man trucks and things like that, I'm a huge fan. Like, probably my favorite truck style of all time is what is known in the Ford truck world as the Dentside Ford series.
Okay.
Do you know what a Dentside Ford is?
I've seen them. I can't picture it at the moment. If it's the one I'm thinking, though, it's a nice one.
So they didn't come out in 78. They actually came out in 73. And we had, bounced around the idea of doing a Dentside Ford episode back during 73. But we had some guests and things like that. But 78 actually is a big year in the Dentside history. The Dentside Fords are made from 73 to 79, that particular era of trucks. Now, of course, back then, I don't think they were called Dentside Fords. I've heard that term used probably for the last 15 years or so. I think it was around the time that people started calling the 80 to 97s OBS Fords, which I'm not a big fan of that term, because OBS as old body style, I mean, to me, that means anything all the way back to the first Ford truck, the Model T in 1925. So Anything could be an old body style Ford.
Yeah.
But prior to the Dentside Ford was basically the same truck dimensionally and somewhat mechanically. But the body line along the side of the truck prior to 73, and I want to say, and I don't know on the bump sides, I think it's 67 to 72. I think that's the era. It might be 68 to 72. The side of the truck had essentially a bump out, and it was just a style. It was a style that ran around, and it went from the front fender all the way to the taillight. So on each side of the vehicle, it was bumped out. It was
like a bubble, kind of?
Yeah, it was like a bubble.
Okay.
It was like 5 inches tall, and then it kind of like bumped out probably about 1.5 inches. And that was the style of it. Well, in 73, when they redesigned the Ford truck, they kept with the same basic dimensions, the same basic frame, the same basic running gear, but they updated it slightly. And that bump, they ended up inverting it. So they went from being an outie belly button to an innie belly button, I guess.
I pulled a picture above it, and those are cool trucks.
The dent side or the bump side?
The dent side.
Okay.
Like a bump side.
So what they did is they basically took that bump and they turned it around 180 degrees. So they went in.
Oh, no, I like the dent better.
You like the dents better?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of, the dent side was...
It's different, but I don't know, I like it a lot better.
Well, that was the thing. The bump side still had a lot of 1960s styling cues to it.
Yeah.
And, going into the 70s and the more crisp lines and the more boxy look was the Dentside Ford. And arguably, the Dentside Ford is probably one of the most popular, at least in this day and age, for people who want to still use and drive a truck, but maybe do some resto modding of it. Because mechanically, they were fairly modern vehicles, at least starting about 78. And that's why 78 is kind of an interesting thing to talk about. The Dentside came out in 73, but it was essentially mechanically and frame and everything was still the old bump side style running gear. So you had like the 360 and 390 big block FE motors, that go way back, very old technology from the 60s. Actually, it went even earlier technology from the late 50s. They had drum brake axles, closed knuckle front axle, tiny axle shafts. Not really much of a 4x4 contender. I mean, they were a 4x4 that worked on the farm, occasional four-wheel drive use, get out of some mud, whatever, but they weren't built particularly heavy duty. And, that was the bump sides. And then, like I said, the dent side kind of went along that same thing. It had the same underpinnings. They had the 360, 390 carried over into it. In the... I don't know what year they went to, but in the F-250 series at least, they had a divorced transfer case, divorced NP205 transfer case. There was still a lot of really old technology. Well, they did a mid-year in 1977, a mid-year rehash mechanically completely of the Ford trucks. And where people don't usually differentiate them as like an early early dent side or a late dent side. What they usually call them, at least when they're referring to the F-250s and in some cases the F-350s, they refer it to as a high boy or a low boy, or they'll say just or the high boy series of trucks.
What's the difference with that?
So the difference is from 73 to mid 1977, the F-250 Ford, and not the 150. The 150 was a completely different chassis, spring layout and everything. They had coil springs. They had basically the same running gear in it. Well, when they went to the F-250, they had a narrow gauge, narrow frame that sat underneath them and a pretty good arch to the leaf springs. And they sat up considerably higher than the F-150. Yeah. So people called them the High Boy. Now, I don't know if that was ever a actual Ford name for the truck or if it was a nickname that was earned. I've done a little bit of research on that, and I've never been able to get a straight answer on that, whether or not it was Ford ever advertised him as a High Boy or if it was on some sort of literature.
So it's fun how slang terms will come to be just used so interchangeably like that.
And I think it probably didn't even come around until the introduction, mid-1977, of what essentially is the 78, 79 lowboy or standard Ford truck. Now, of course, in the 4x4 world, people go, oh, well, they lowered it. That's not cool. But here, hang on a second. The High Boy still had all that old technology in it. It had the divorce 205. You had the closed knuckle front axle. Not a lot of great parts. A very finicky, essentially, it was a hydraulic assist steering system. So they were a manual system with like a hydraulic assist. They were terrible power steering system. So they redid everything mid-77, and they put a wider frame. It was basically a 32-inch wide frame. They went to wider leaf springs, and that's when you got the open knuckle high pinion Dana 60, the open knuckle high pinion Dana 44. You got the modern heavy duty components that really are what made those pieces are still being pulled out of junkyard trucks to this day and put into Jeeps and things like that. And then they got the married 205 that went, behind either the manual 4-speed or behind the C6 automatic. And everything got compact and just beefier is what it did. But that design that they came up with, even though the bodies will interchange and the body mounts and everything are all the same, the frame and all the running gear is completely different. They also introduced the M series engine, which is it's essentially a big block that was kind of essentially D-stroke to kind of small block sizes. They were in 351 and 400 cubic inches. But they were very, they were high torque, low RPM engines. They were originally supposed to be a replacement for some of the big block stuff, but then the fuel crisis hit. And so they derated the engine and they decompressed the engine. And they made a very stout, they're not like some great race car engine. You can do some.
It sounds like it leaves the door open to build some stuff out of that.
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of based off the 351 Cleveland design. And but it was more of a big block version of it, and so it was a decent engine. So you got a new engine for mid-77, you got the new axles, you got the new trans and transfer case combination, and then they also in the Ranger body style package, you got the square headlights in 78.
Nice.
So in 78, you could see the square headlights on some and round headlights on others, and then for 79, they were all square headlight. They phased out the round headlights altogether.
I always like the looks of those better.
The square or the round?
Truck, the squares.
Well, yeah.
I've never been a fan of round lights. But
I go for both. I mean,
I like them in the Jeeps, don't mind you.
Yeah. I like on the Fords the grille design. If you look at the early Dentsides had a split grille on them, and it's not a bad looking grille, but I do like the 78, 79 open, what they would call like the egg crate grille. I do like that design a little bit better.
This one.
Oh, you're taking a look on it?
Maybe, yeah, with the squares.
Yeah, that's a 78, 79. Oh, it says 78 right on there, yeah. So, it was good looking.
Is that nice?
Good looking trucks, aren't they?
Oh, God, yeah.
Very classic style.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like clean.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I like. It's simple.
Well,
simple.
A lot of truck guys and Ford truck guys pretty much attribute these, because 78 was the first full year production of that new style. They consider that the first modern Ford truck. You had disc brakes, you had the open knuckle axles, you had a 32-inch wide frame. Even though Ford went to a 36-inch wide frame later on, it really was mechanically something that still will keep up today. You can take a 78 Ford today, and
I like that one the best so far.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good looking one. Good looking one. And you can drive it, every single day or across the country, and you can keep up with traffic. It's got enough power to keep up with traffic.
Nice.
You can tow pretty heavy loads with it. It's when they modernize a truck. You're not talking that old 50s technology stuff anymore. And so 78 was really kind of a big year for Ford, even though it was a quiet year, because the body still looked the same.
Yeah.
And now they had this 4x4 that was about 2 inches lower, at least in the 250, 350 series. The 150s had been coil spring going from 73 on up. Actually, the earlier ones were as well. But, we're kind of talking about the heavy duty stuff and the Highboy. And then, like I said, 78, there was other things. They basically just rehashed the same model, but completely new designs. Kind of like they did with the Super Duty, where different ages throughout the Super Duty here, they've kept the same basic design, but they switched out the motors, they switched out the axles, they just kind of upgraded on it.
Updated everything.
Exactly.
I like it.
Exactly. And now...
kind of like they did with the 4.0. Just kind of some periodic updates throughout its lifespan.
Yeah, well,
That unfortunately killed it.
Well, I don't know if you know that, going off on a tangent there, I did a history article for the Dispatcher magazine because I write for them every other month. It's a bi-monthly publication. And I did one about the Jeep 4.0 history going all the way back. Now, I know we did a podcast about the 4.0 forever ago. I don't remember when that was, but I kind of got more in depth in that article.
I got to find that. I didn't know you did that one.
Yeah, I've got it somewhere. I'll have to dig it up for you and show it to you. It's a pretty interesting article. And I also did one about diesel Jeeps and did some other stuff. So
how have I not known you've done these articles? I know you wrote for.
I do a lot of things. I keep secrets from you.
But why? I thought we were good, man.
Yeah.
I'm hurt.
Well, so these 78, 79 Fords, I've always been a huge fan of. I like the crew cabs, which are pretty rare. We can actually talk about those in a minute. And really all of them, though, I've always appreciated them. I've had over 20 of these trucks, some that I've driven every day, and then some as parts vehicles. And I don't have one right now.
One or two of them, I think.
Probably the red crew cab and the big green truck, I would say.
I remember a green one.
Yeah. And then
Wasn't that the one you got the Dana 60s from?
No.
Okay.
No, those were parts trucks. And then I had, but anyways, I've had a number of different ones.
Yeah, I remember one or two of them. It's fuzzy. It's been a while.
Well, speaking of the big green truck, I don't know how much you've been following the Museum of Off-Road Adventures Facebook page lately, but did you see the competition or the contest we did, the trivia contest?
I did, yeah.
Did you see?
I followed a little bit with it.
Did you see what the final answer was and everything?
I read it and I don't remember, and I feel bad because I should have remembered that one.
Well, so basically,
I should have known that one.
Good friends of mine that I work with. I work with Lorenzo Hart. He's a good friend of mine, and him and his wife Crystal for Christmas came up and they actually bought a Foxfire Fixins $50 gift card, and they donated it to the museum under the guise of, they said we wanted to do a trivia contest tying both Foxfire and the museum somehow together.
Cool.
And whoever won it, would win the card. Well, they ended up taking, and they also said that they wanted it to be really tough, like almost an impossible question, and something that couldn't be easily Googled.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pretty much Google everything, but we had to keep it vague enough to work. So we came up with the question was, what was, my late father, Al Codet, what was his first 4x4? And then we gave, and he was the owner of Foxfire Fixins, so it tied both Foxfire and the museum.
Yeah.
And we gave some clues, and the first clues that we gave were that it was a fairly common model of truck, but the cab style made it rare. And I forgot exactly how we worded it all, but basically we ended up giving new clues every single week for 3 weeks because people were guessing, and you could guess once a week. Some people got really, really close with it.
Yeah.
But we eventually gave them the clue that it was a half-ton vehicle and that the half-ton with that cab style made it rare. We gave them the clue that it was only available with an 8-foot bed and it was not available with a 6-foot bed.
As any truck should ever be.
Well, so, and we can talk about that in a minute here too. The final answer was a 79 F-150 extended cab 4x4 truck.
Nice.
In 79 and that was another, it was a 1 year only model. That was one of the clues. 1979, which was the last year of the Dentside Ford wanted to be able to sell essentially their F-250 extended cab 4x4. They wanted to be able to sell it in markets where the F-250 and 350 were considered commercial vehicles. Now, some states at the time, if you went to go buy an F-250 or a 350, they would make you registered as a commercial vehicle. But of course, there was people that wanted to be able to tow campers and things like that. So they took the F-250, and this is what made this vehicle unique. In 79 only, they took the F-250, which had an 11-inch tall frame. The extended cab had a big frame on it.
That's a big frame.
The standard had a 9-inch, so they went to an 11-inch. Had the extended cab with the 8-foot bed. You could not get it with a 4-foot bed if you got 6-foot bed if you got the 4-wheel drive.
Good.
So, well, I don't know. Extended cab short bed 4-wheel drive is kind of nice for off-roading and stuff, but
well,
we're going to talk about that in a second here.
Yeah.
But so what they would do, so they made this truck, but then they put the leaf spring. It was still the leaf spring frame. The F-150s, all the other F-150s, the regular cabs, got coil springs. When they went to the extended cab, you had leaf springs, and you had the F-250 frame underneath it, but what they did is they put 5-lug axles under it instead of the 8-lug axles, and they were able to sell it as an F-150. Now, that front, they only made like 7,200 of these trucks.
Oh, wow.
And the flat top knuckles are highly desirable because they're a flat tub 5-log knuckle, and people would take them and use them for old, Jeep builds and things like that. So a lot of these trucks have been cannibalized over the years.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of surviving ones. There's probably only a couple hundred of them left, honestly. I mean, because they were rusty trucks. Well, my dad had bought one years ago with a bad engine in it and used it around the farm a little bit. I eventually ended up with a truck with a new engine, and that's a whole nother, we had a lot of adventures with that truck.
Say whatever happened to it.
I had it for a number of years, and then I eventually gave it to our mutual friend Lucas. He used it as a plow truck for their shop. He gave it back to me. It was in pretty bad shape.
That then.
Yeah. And we ended up... I eventually ended up selling it to a guy, and he actually contacted me.
It was everything with Lucas.
Yeah, and he contacted me about a month ago, and he's the guy that owns it now. He's down in Ohio, and he's restoring the truck.
Oh, cool!
And he contacted me because he still had the title that was in my name, and apparently some title work was done incorrectly. And he said if there's any issue with his local DMV, want to know if I would be able to send him a letter or something. I said, yeah, absolutely, that's fine. So it's nice to know the truck lives on.
That is awesome, yeah.
But that was our trivia contest one. And we had, what was weird is we had a bunch of people guessing 78 F-150 extended cab, 4-wheel drive. That didn't exist.
Yeah.
They had a 78 F-150 extended cab, but you could only get it in 2-wheel drive in 78. So Ford was really weird about the Dentsides at the time. So to give you some examples, from 73 to 79, if you ordered a crew cab, if you wanted 4-wheel drive, it only came with a 6-foot bed. If you wanted an 8-foot bed, it only came with 2-wheel drive.
Why?
And they didn't have a crew cab, or no, I'm sorry, they did have a crew cab short bed, 2-wheel drive as well, but you could get 2-wheel drive, short bed, and long bed, but when you go to the 4-wheel drive, and I think they were justifying something with the turning radius, but it wouldn't make any sense because once you went to the F-150, it only came with an 8-foot bed, and you couldn't get it with a 6-foot bed in the 4-wheel drive. Weird things that they did. There was a lot of stuff with that. It was like you could only order some cab styles with certain bed styles, and it was nonsensical.
Yeah, I mean, it's Ford. You remember what he originally said back in the early 1900s. You can have any color you want as long as it's black.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. And so there was a lot of things with that where they did that. And they continued that tradition actually all the way up until about 1996. There was a lot of back and forth.
Weird
now, I mean, to this day, you still can't order like a short bed F-250 regular cab. They've never built that, which would be a weird truck anyways.
Yeah.
But,
It'd be interesting, though.
Well, people have made them.
Yeah.
They've chopped the frame.
I wonder how hard it'd be to tub swap that stuff.
Well, it's not it's bed swap.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they chop the frame short.
Yeah,
frame.
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Guys have done it. So it's just it's an interesting truck series. A lot of fun with those truck series. They're pretty much everything's all steel. You still got a steel dashboard. When you go in over to 1980, you start going to more of the plastic dashboard stuff. You go to.
So we were talking about that earlier.
And with the Dentsides, 1980 with the Ford trucks is when they dropped the solid axle completely. 79 was the last year for the solid axle in the trucks until 1986, when in the F-350 only the solid axle came back. So from 80 to 85 were very dark years in the Ford.
To say the least.
Yeah.
All I remember from 78 was that when they switched the Dana 44 front on those. They went to the cast wedges on them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's correct. So that's something else for your junkyard hunters out there. What John was talking about here is the F-150 used coil spring front ends, except for that oddball 79 only that we just talked about. So 73 to 79, the F-150 ran, and I believe they were all disc brakes. They might have switched over in 74 or 75. They might have had drum brakes the first year or two on the coil springs. I'm not sure on that.
I don't remember because I've looked into those axles before, and that's the only reason I knew that.
Yeah.
I found a good deal on a set. I mean, like, I'd be an idiot to not get these kind of deal. And I started looking at them and found out they were 78, and it's like, I can't use them for anything.
Well, what he's talking about there is, so in 73, when with the Dana 44 high pinion, coil spring radius arm front end, they did not have a 4-length, they didn't have leaf springs. It was a radius arm coil spring front end starting 73 with the Dentsides. And up until 77, they had standard Dana 44 with welded on wedges that were welded onto the axle tubes, and then the radius arm would bolt around the wedge with a rubber mount. That works out pretty well. And if you want to swap that axle into something else, you want to put a high pinion Dana 44 into something, you can take one of those 73 to 79 Dana 44s and you can cut off the welded on wedges, and you can put leaf spring mounts or 4-link mounts or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
It's a pretty nice setup.
I was so close to having that build plan done.
Well, then in mid-77, for whatever reason, they started making the Dana 44, and this was only in the 44s, not in the 60s, but they started casting the C's on the driver's side into the differential assembly. It was this big cast assembly on there, and there's really no way to cut that off or to weld anything to it.
There's like a sleeving process you can do, but it's just a pain, and you're looking more trouble than it's worth to do it at that point. I looked into a couple options, and it's just like, I'm going to spend more to make it what I want than to buy what I want.
Exactly.
So I didn't do it.
So for junkyard grabbing for parts, the 78, 79 F-150 and Bronco, because it's the same axle.
Yeah, that's one they call the early Bronco is the good one, late Bronco's not.
No, that's different. The early Bronco is
the axles.
Yeah, that's a whole different story. The early Bronco is the 77 and older Broncos that are the small body style Broncos.
Yeah.
Those are a low pinion Dana 44.
I've been greatly misunderstanding
and
something.
those are narrow axles. And so those have a narrower track width. In 1978, the Bronco went to the F-Series. That's another thing, and that's something
that was my miscommunication then. I thought they were all the same for some reason.
And I guess maybe that's a good 78 thing we could have gone into as well, too, or maybe we should just do that, because we're already talking about the 78 Dentside. In 1978 is the first year for the full-size Ford Bronco. So 1978, they went from the tiny body.
That makes a lot more sense than what I was thinking then. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. So in 78, they made the Bronco truck-based. It was the same front end, same doors as the F-150, 250. Yeah. And so you ended up taking, and that was another big switchover thing for 78 with that Ford F-Series platform, is they took the Bronco into the F-Series. Prior it was not an F-Series truck. And then the Broncos stayed in F-Series all the way through 1997. That was the F-Series Broncos. Now, with the new Broncos, they're again back their own separate make again. They're not in the F-Series.
I still like the look of them.
I guess that's something we could have called this episode, or maybe we still will, but that was the beginning of the F-Series Broncos, 78, and it ran it up through, 97, and then that was the...
So that means there's got to be a lot of parts that'll interchange between the F-Series and that?
Yeah, most of them.
Nice.
But back on your cast wedge thing, like we were saying, the 78, 79 F-Series and Bronco front axle, not a good axle to deal with.
No.
You can rob them for internal parts, but that's about it.
That was such a good deal, too.
Well, it's not a good deal if it's not a good axle.
Well, the price was good it was a matched pair. Yeah. I mean, they're sitting in the dirt, and it's like, come get them. Yeah. Take them for this price, and they weren't what I wanted.
Exactly. So if you're junkyard shopping for a coil spring, wide width Dana 44 high pinion, then you really want to look at like a 75, 76 axle. That's really what you're going to be looking for if you're going to swap it into something else, like a Jeep or a full-size truck or whatever.
Commando in my case.
All the F-250 Dana 44 high pinions from 77.5 through 79 didn't have any wedges or anything on them. They were all leaf spring and lots of room to weld with their 8-lug. So, that's the difference there. You can swap the outers on them, but there's some differences with the outers, and that's one of the reasons that the 79 F-150 outers are more desirable, because they're the flat top and stuff like that. So and the flat top outers were not on the standard coil spring F-150s and Broncos.
Well, that ruined that thought.
There's some weird parts intermatching. I could talk all day about that. As you can see, there's some differences there.
Yeah.
And so then they went into the Broncos, and the Broncos were mechanically the same as the F-150s. So there's really not anything different to mention with that, except for, hey, this is the full-size Bronco now, and now we have the full-size Bronco.
It makes a lot more sense than what I had previously understood.
Which ran for almost 20 years, It was good.
I never realized it went that long.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, and that's when you hear people say early Bronco axles at 77 and older. It's not.
I knew that part.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was two totally different sizes, though.
Yep.
I knew the difference was width, but I didn't realize it shared that. I didn't realize the early Broncos did not share a platform with the F series.
One of the popular mods for early Bronco people to do, if they're building a rock crawler or something like that, is to run full-size forward axles underneath it, so it gives them the width.
Yeah,
it's like
sense.
6 or 7 inches wider, and now they're running full width axles on the trail.
Nice.
And some people like doing that with the bigger tires and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So the early Bronco axles, go to lift a Bronco, and it's a pretty narrow vehicle still. The early Broncos.
Yeah.
So putting the later full width axles underneath them
If anyone
works
has a
out.
set of really Bronco axles they want gone, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I think we need people to do that are listening to this episode, if you're a big fan of Dentside Fords or the full-size Broncos, we need some pictures on 4x4 Talk of what your rigs are. You need to go on there and say, hey, guys, here's what I'm wheeling. Here's what I have. Here's what I restored, whatever. Going back to a minute for cab styles, the Dentside was also the first time that you could get an extended cab. That was they introduced the extended cab, I think for 74 or 75. The extended cab Ford, that was the first time you could get an extended cab Ford. And the extended cab Ford predates the Chevy by many, many years. Chevy didn't come out with an extended cab till 88. Wow. And then not in the full-size trucks.
Oh, okay.
So the S10s, they had extended cabs, but not back in 84, I think. But 88, so the 80s, they didn't do anything until the 80s. Dodge had extended cabs as well, and I don't remember off the top of my head. I think the Dodge predates the Ford by like a year on the extended cabs, but it was Dodge and Ford only. The most valuable and sought-after Dentside Fords are most arguably the crew cab Dentsides.
By the sound of it, yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation about the crew cabs out there simply because there was never good record keeping on the crew cabs 73 to 79 Ford crew cabs because they were not essentially a production truck, but yet they were. They were a factory-built truck, but they were built by Ford of Canada, the cabs were.
Nice.
The frames were specifically made. The frames weren't extended or anything like that, but they would actually cut the regular cabs, and they added the back panels and the roof panel and everything to them. If people say no, they're production. Get underneath the 73 to 79 Dentside Ford crew cab if you ever see one. They're pretty rare trucks, and you will see a seam that runs all the way under the floor that you can see where they cut it basically with a Sawzall. And you can do it at the A-pillar as well. What's interesting is have you ever heard that phrase, buy a truck or vehicle that wasn't built on a Monday and Friday?
Yes.
Well, basically, that was kind of one of the deals with the crew cabs. Every single one of the crew cab Fords that you see from 73 to 79, the rear doors fit differently. Some of them have big old gaps in them. Some of them are real tight. And the fitment of these cabs was really all over the place.
That's funny.
Now,
That's got to be annoying to work on, though.
I've owned 4 or 5 of them. And like I said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Now, there's numbers that float around on the internet. One of the things is, if you look at the production numbers, you can find production numbers for all the Broncos, all the F-150s, all the 250s, 350s, all of those, but they go by cab style as well, the extended cabs, but they don't tell you the crew cabs. The crew cab numbers that you see out there are all essentially assumptions. The number has floated around for years that there were 2,500 crew cab F-250s and 350s built from 73 to 79. So that's not a lot of them. It's only 2,500. But it is known, one number that is known for sure is that Amtrak, the train company, bought 1,000 crew cab Fords that were 73 to 79. Now, I think all the ones they bought between like 76 and 79. I think that's about when they started buying them.
Nice.
But they bought 500 crew cab short bed four-wheel drives, and most of those were painted yellow. And then they bought 500 crew cab 8-foot bed, two-wheel drive, dually flatbeds. So, and those were painted mostly red with the Amtrak logo around the center of them.
That's cool.
I've actually had 2 of the Amtrak trucks.
Nice.
I had one of the four-wheel drives and one of the two-wheel drives.
They still have logos.
The two-wheel drive flatbed still did.
That is awesome.
Still had them on there.
Awesome.
And it's a pretty rare truck. Now, when I did a lot of more digging and research on them, it's my belief that the 1,000 trucks that Amtrak bought are not included in that 2,500 number. So they actually made 3,500 at least of these trucks. They may have made a lot more. I'm not sure.
No.
But they would send these to Ford of Canada. The cabs were, like I said, custom put together, put back together. They were sent to whatever Ford plant for final assembly, and then they were sold. So they weren't all sold in Canada. They were sold in the U.S.
Yeah.
But the civilian version crew cabs, you could get them in the Ranger trim, the custom trim, things like that. You get a lot of neat stuff with them. And so they were,
That is awesome.
pretty neat trucks. So if you see one out there, if you ever see a four-door 73 to 79 Ford truck, know it's something. The values are going way up on them. Some of the parts are near impossible to find, like the rear door panels, the rear door glass, some of those pieces. So if
Is anyone doing repro parts on that?
No.
Like they do with the Chevy stuff?
No, I think they're doing rear door seals, and that's it. But they're
gotcha.
not. There was not enough of them made that they could justify making.
That would make sense.
Like the rear door panels. I have been lucky enough to get one or two sets from junkyard trucks I found over the years that were just not restorable, and the rear door panels will sell for a couple $100s on eBay because people and they made them in like 3 or 4 different colors, but. People will just take whatever ones they can get and they'll spray paint them the color they need because they're just so rare.
Yeah.
And, but pretty neat trucks. There's a lot of other little interesting things that came up. I think the Dentside was the first time you get tilt steering in a Ford truck. And that was kind of a neat tilt steering. You had to push forward on the turn signal stalk, and that's how it would.
Weird.
It's funny because a lot of people that have bought these trucks in recent years and they're driving them around don't even know that they're tilt. I actually had that happen once with a guy. I was looking at one for sale, and we never did get the price correct on it. He wouldn't, we couldn't get the price correct on it, and we're negotiating. But I'm looking at it. I said, "Hey, you got a pretty rare tilt steering column in that." And he goes, "That's not a tilt steering column." He goes, "I've had this truck for 15 years. It's not tilt." And I went in and I pushed it forward and he's like, "Holy cow, man!" So
That's
that was
awesome.
kind of neat. One other thing about engines, there was a lot of engines that were offered in that series of Ford truck. You could get anywhere from the straight 6s to the 302s to the 351s of both the Windsor and the M series. You could get the 400 M series. You could also get the 460 big block. But interestingly enough, the 460 big block was only offered in the two-wheel drives. It was not offered into the four-wheel drive trucks, even though it's essentially a bolt-in swap.
That was my next question. Is this like a universal pattern? You just swap any of these engines into it?
There was 2 different patterns that were available. So on the F series back then, you had the small block bolt pattern, which was the straight 6, the 302, and the 351 Cleveland. The big block bolt pattern was on the M series and on the 429 460.
Nice.
Now the M series. Another thing it's kind of a big pet peeve of me in the truck world is people call those modifieds all the time. They go, "It's a 351 modified" because it's got an M on it.
I think we've discussed this one before.
Oh, I think we have, yeah. And it was never a modified. That was something that somebody had written in a book about back then, but Ford never called it a modified. There's a good chance they called it a Midland, 351 Midland, but for all intents and purposes, it's just an M. It's an M series. So... man, is there anything else about Dentsides that you want to talk about? I love Dentsides. As you can tell, I could talk about Dentsides all day long.
Yeah.
I love those trucks, but...
They ever make any with a diesel option?
No. There was some that were converted by aftermarket outfitters. You could actually order a Perkins diesel through a dealership. Ooh. I think they only made a couple hundred of them.
Oh.
But no, there was never... Ford didn't have diesels until I think it was 86 when you could get the 6.9 IDI International V8 in it. And so the Ford diesels didn't come out until a few more years later.
Bummer.
Yeah, around the same time Dodge was playing around with the Nissan diesel, but the Cummins didn't even come out until 87 or 89 actually. So
that'd be an awesome swap into one of those things. That'd be a really cool build.
So the Cummins 12 valve goes very nicely into a bump side or a Dentside Ford.
Nice.
There's several companies such as D-Stroked that offers adapter kits for them. And there's motor mount kits, very easy swap. Depending on the frame style you have, some of the frames you do have to cut out the cross member that goes under the engine and lower it a couple inches. Pretty easy modification with a welder.
Yeah.
Somebody that knows how to do that. It's just literally notching out a plate and lowering it.
Nice.
But
Nice simple project.
yeah, no, it's like I said, I love those that series of Ford trucks.
Yeah.
I would like to get another one someday.
Maybe a future wheeling project.
Absolutely, and I would like to do a Cummins powered one. I've never done one. I've seen a number of them over the years, or a 7.3. Just do a 7.3 international in one.
My
or
only
something.
question you do there, are you going to get the Fummins valve cover for it?
Oh, geez, from Chad over at Quick Draw, yeah, because he sells those. Yeah.
Isn't there another name for one of those?
I don't. Well, I mean, in a Chevy, it'd be a Chummins.
Yeah, I thought there was another slang one for Ford though.
I've heard Fummins a lot,
Yeah.
and there's actually Fummins Facebook pages, and people
I'm
call
probably
them that.
thinking of something else altogether.
And those are some of the first Fords they started swapping the Cummins
Yeah.
into. So, they were pretty cool trucks. But, maybe
like
someday, I know you're not a big Ford guy, but maybe someday,
I like them.
I
I like the old ones. I don't like the new ones. I like the older ones. I like the Raptor though.
To
but
me-
that's beside the point.
to me, that's the magical year series
Yeah.
because you still had everything was steel, everything was durable, everything was
Yeah.
simple, but you still had the modern suspension, the modern
Yeah.
brakes, and all of that,
like when
and
the truck
modern
grew up.
steering. Really, that's what it is. So it's a couple years only that 77 and a half through 79. You had the old school looks with the modern components, and then 1980 you went to more modern looks, more modern components, and
plastic.
and IFS.
Nah.
And yeah, exactly. So last of the greats that they really updated. So that's
sure.
it's a great series of trucks. But and if we ever got one for the museum, I was thinking back a while ago about it. I think we do eventually need a Dentside in the museum, but I think it would probably be best for us to try to find a one of the Amtrak, one of the 500 Amtrak crew cab 4-wheel drives.
That'd be neat, or see if that guy wants to sell it when he's done restoring it.
Well, that one's
Ohio.
not an Amtrak truck. Or you were talking the 79 extended
dad's.
cab? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a rare truck there too. That would be an interesting one to put in
That
there.
would be.
But, either that or an Amtrak. Those would be the two rarest
The
of the
Amtrak one might be kind of cool, and then we got to get a little train set to go around it.
That'd be pretty cool. Yeah,
would
do a
be.
bunch of train
Yeah.
memorabilia around it.
That would be sweet.
That would be pretty cool. Well, buddy, unless you got anything else new with you going on right now or anything?
Not a whole lot. I got a new noise in the Jeep. Not even thinking about it right now. Been driving the truck for a week or two.
Where's the noise coming from? The engine, rear axle, front axle, transfer case,
I think the trains.
trans? Yeah.
I'm not happy.
You have to find someone that knows how to rebuild an AX-15.
Yeah, about that.
So
No, I'll figure it out. Always do. I just had busy, plans this weekend, so wasn't able to get to it. Next weekend, hopefully, maybe.
I was wondering why you pulled up
see.
in the truck this time, but
Yeah.
I forgot to ask you. But
It's all good.
well, why don't you tell people where they can find us, where they need to let us know about things?
So Keith is, we're in East China here.
Yeah, it's the
What's
east,
the name of
east
that
side
road?
of China. Yeah.
No, we're not going to do actual addresses, but if you go on Facebook.com/groups, you can look up Wheelin' Radio, or I'm sorry, 4x4 Talk, or Wheelin' Radio, whatever you want to join.
Yeah.
4x4 Talk is kind of where we interact with everybody, so you can post up there, share some pictures of your cool 70s Ford trucks or Bronco or whatever you want to share. Ask any questions, post it there. Of course, do have to give a huge shout out and thank you to Mr. Andrew, our producer. Without him, none of this would be possible. Thank you. Much appreciated. Don't forget to check us out on patreon.com. Access to the End of the Trail, the after show we do following the episodes as we record them. Those $2 a month, get access to a lot of bonus content, stuff we forget about in the show. And who was that we did last time on that one? Did we ever cover to make sure they check that out for that?
What do you mean?
Did we ever tell them who we talked to on our last episode?
On the Patreon show?
Yeah. I don't think we ever
I'm
told
not sure if we
anybody.
did. We talked to Lee Stockwell from One Broken. We shouldn't have said his real name. Whatever. He'll be fine with
We
it.
can bleep it.
Yeah. We talked to Pop from One Broken Bulb. It's an impromptu, what do they call that? Improv.
Yes.
Improv, show. He does a comedy show. Had a lot of fun with him on that.
That was a wild episode.
His platform is kind of he asks people random questions without giving them any sort of heads up. And
Yep.
so we did the same thing to him, but made them all
Yep.
automotive related.
Yep, and this went back and forth. This wasn't just give it out. We took a few good ones too there.
I tell you what, for the $2, sign up to the Patreon show, and especially even just listening to the Pop thing. And I think you get 30 free days or something anyways. So
essentially, yeah.
And do we have new Patreon episodes uploaded pretty soon?
Working on it. Working on it
right
now.
now.
We're going to have a whole bunch of new stuff coming in the next couple of weeks here.
What I would like to mention as well is me personally, I am a little less active on Facebook these days. I'm no longer carrying it on my mobile devices. I still do access it from the laptop. But I do still have Twitter and Instagram going on for Wheelin' that do go to my...
I still don't have Twitter.
Yeah, they go to my phone. I'm not active on them, but I am seeing we're getting a little more activity on those. Those are great places to post photos. So if you've got a really cool Dentside Ford, make sure that you tag us on Twitter or Instagram. Just tag us and say, hey, Wheelin' Radio, check this out.
I'm still learning how to do all that with the Instagram thing.
You do the @ and then... So all you have to do on Instagram is @Wheelin' Radio.
I just learned how to share stuff on there. Not like posting pictures, like find one I like to share it to my story.
Oh, okay.
That's cool though. I like it.
And the same thing on Twitter. You can do #Wheelin' Radio or @Wheelin' Radio to tag us. So
I like it.
They can do that and check us all out. And of course, the Museum of Off-Road Adventure is always a big part of our lives. And we're hoping to be open back up pretty regular hours soon. And if you're interested in following them, go on Facebook, Museum of Off-Road Adventure. Same thing on Twitter and Instagram. Pretty, cool place to check out. And if you are an Amazon user, which I think during Rona 2021 everyone is, you can go to Amazon Smile.
Smile.amazon.com.
Smile.amazon.com.
Your same login, everything's exactly the same. It just adds a little logo and the smile in the upper left.
And choose Museum of Off-Road Adventure as your charity that you're going to have Amazon donate to. It doesn't cost you anything, but Amazon's going to donate 0.5% of your purchase price on there. So if you're purchasing those $100,000 Wayfair cabinets or whatever you're doing, we're going to get a percentage of that, and we really appreciate that. We do get a check every couple of months from Amazon, so make sure you check that out for us. And
every $3 audio cable helps.
Absolutely.
So with that, going off tangent from our exit greeting, thanks for listening and have a good one, everybody.